Hello everyone, my name is Karina. I go by Cardsi on social media, and today's video is part 1 of the prom dress series. The prom dress itself evolved over time, but throughout it all I had in my head this vision of embroidering my own corset. So eventually I came up with a silhouette that I liked, and I continued on sketching and sketching until I thought I had come with the final design. Although I liked the colors and the design of this prom dress, it eventually had to change. The reason why I had to change was when I went fabric hunting, I discovered that the colors I had originally chosen for my design did not look good with my skin tone. So I scrapped the colors, kept the silhouette, and instead I chose this purplish maroon color that I found at Joann's. I picked embroidery floss that matched with the original design in mind, but later on, as you'll see, the design will change. Originally, I was attempting to self-draft the corset pattern, but I soon realized after my first attempt that it would be more time effective to use a pre-existing pattern and edit that rather than spend many hours cutting and recutting pattern pieces to create the shape that I had in my head. So I researched online and found this pattern. It is an overbust corset pattern called the Loris by the corseteer, and I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong, Aranea Black. I will have the pattern link in the description along with her YouTube channel. I kept the grain in mind as I was beginning to place down my pattern pieces onto the duck canvas I chose for this project. I really like using this material for corsetry. It tends to be on the cheaper side because it's not as expensive as couture. In case you're curious, this is the same material that I used for my 1901 S-bend corset that I used for my Violet Evergarden cosplay. I tried the pattern on without putting bones into the corset mock-up. As expected, it was loose on me in more areas than others. For instance, the back needed to be taken in a lot more at the top, and the very bottom around my hips was a bit loose and was bunching in certain areas, so I had to slash up to certain points to figure out how to solve this issue. Later on, you'll see me fiddling around, especially with the back panels, to try and figure out exactly how to achieve a back panel that will take away the wrinkles. This basic shape of the pattern is going to be heavily altered, as you'll see in a minute, into the design that I wanted. So what's happened is I've grabbed the mock-up I've made and a bunch of random other fabrics, and I've just been attacking this dress form to see visually a little bit of the silhouette and the shape I'm making. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take what I changed here and put it onto the pattern pieces, and then from there I'll continue. We have this beautiful shape, and I have the waistline marked on these pieces. So as you can see, when I line them up along these tick marks, you can see where that waistline is, and you can see the shape. And obviously, if I were to turn this in this direction, you would see what the bottom looks like. But this is what the top's looking like. And we have that dramatic triangular shape I wanted at the top, swooping down at my armhole, because my arm would be right here, and then going towards my back. Okay, so I'm calling this the apocalypse right now because of everything going on with the virus. You know, I should say what day it is. This is March 20th, the Friday of high school spring break for my county. Slowly things are beginning to trickle down to here. So my high school has been basically canceled for an entire month. The corset, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be using that mock-up for the actual corset, real corset. So me drawing on there right now is not really that big of a deal because all those drawings are going to get covered, and it's just to help me map out exactly what I'm doing. I changed the embroidery design from a vine that kind of goes triangular in certain places. Now it's going to like a free-forming, almost illustration going on the corset itself. I originally got inspiration for this tree by surfing Pinterest, and eventually I stumbled upon this watercolor illustration of this juniper tree. Now the piece itself is called The Old Juniper Tree. It is by, and I'm sorry if I pronounce her name wrong, Meredith Nemirov. There will be a link for her in the description. Now what I drew inspiration from this tree is the way she approached using the colors to show movement in this bending tree. And what I mean by that is there is very thick strokes of color to show the bark moving into that curved direction, and that is what I drew inspiration from, as you'll see later on in the embroidery of when I start doing this. Now one of the things I was starting to come to terms with as I was sketching out this tree was exactly how much embroidery I was gonna have to like sit through to make this. And as I was considering this, I was realizing that, oh my goodness, I have all these multiple panels. This giant tree that I'm drawing is crossing over multiple seam lines, so that means that every single seam of this embroidery has to match up. So one of the difficulties I'm going to have later on is making sure that all my embroidery is going to match up, which crosses into the territory of how exactly am I going to mark onto my material the design of the embroidery. If you haven't noticed by now already, a lot of the process for making this corset is putting it together, seam ripping it, putting it together, seam ripping it. And this happens quite a bit. Now, the reason why you saw earlier with me working with a red pen was because I was taking in the bust a little bit more to better suit my body. And Rocco, what? And so what's going to happen right now is one of my biggest problems is trying to figure out how to transfer the design I drew onto what was the mock-up, which most likely going to end up as the actual understructure of the garment, onto the material. This embroidery hoop has to go around the material. Now, if I just lay the pieces down and cut them out, then when I put on the embroidery hoop, I'm going to lose tension in the spots where there's not extra material holding it into place in the other directions. So in theory, it would be fine because the tension would be going in this direction, but then I would lose tension here. I had to figure out a way to transfer the markings onto the material and also have it be where I have it spaced out enough to where I can hoop the pieces. So I started off by taking the main piece that I was most excited about to embroider and using that as my tester. So as you can see, I'm using tracing paper, I'm drawing my design onto the tracing paper, and then carefully cutting out the paper. And this is actually no easy feat because the paper was very delicate. At some points, I'm going in with my rotary cutter and cutting out the negative space, and I'll use this later to put it on top of the material so that I can mark both the negative and the positive spaces and the seam allowance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my embroidery hoop, and I'm going to figure out exactly approximately how big this square I have to cut out of material is going to be. My actual pieces are so short. I have about like a square right here that I can use for my practice. this video in the beginning. So what's gonna happen is I'm going to be cutting out these pieces finally, and let's hope everything is fine. I'm gonna cut them out now so that I don't have to do it later and I can see if there's any problems. And the good thing is that all the pieces take up half of the material I bought, so if there's any problem whatsoever, I can recut the material using the other half of the fabric yarn I bought. So this is all I have left to embroider. This is the biggest thing that needs to be tackled, so probably I'll tackle this one first because this is the biggest surface area. One thing I did differently this time around as I was tracing out the pieces was, instead of tracing out every single detail that I drew, I traced out the exact outline and then later on went in with the details by hand. At first, I started using this big embroidery hoop, which I had used for the tester that ended up being the actual piece for the front. But then, as you'll see later on, I noticed that I can get a lot more tension and I'm able to move my arm a lot more easily underneath a smaller hoop. So later on, I did go and I purchased a smaller hoop. After doing that first front panel, I noticed that my hands started to get quicker at doing the embroidery, and I started discovering easier ways and more effective ways to do the embroidery. For instance, with the leaves, it started off in the first panel as me doing it very scattered, but as I got into the other panels, I started doing this very triangular shape that expanded outward, and that gave me a much more dense and effective way of doing the leaves. The leaves have two colors, although I mainly use the darker green. They are covered with a light purple flowers all the way around, and I believe the term for the technique I used to do the flowers is called a French knot. One of my favorite things about this embroidery is the colors that I chose. I love so much all those rich browns that connected together to create the bark. And I love scattering around those leaves. It was just such a satisfying time. Funnily enough, while I was doing all these leaves and trees, I was listening to the Jurassic Park audiobook. Once the first two panels were done, I cut them out, making sure to leave enough room for the other panels so that I could still hoop them with a smaller hoop. And this just made it easier for me to see if the pattern pieces were still matching up and gave me a bit more room to work with underneath the material so I don't have to constantly move my hand underneath a sheet of material. It was so exciting pinning these pieces together. It made me realize just how much work I had been doing and that it was not all for nothing. I kind of freaked out a bit. Then when it came to the final pieces, I got into a very calm state and I just kept going at it. All this embroidery has been like a very big challenge for myself. Originally when quarantine happened and I heard the news that prom was canceled, I got a bit demotivated and I kept telling myself that I could throw my own morph at home. But the reality of everything canceling and then me having to focus back on making sure I finished my college classes and my high school classes strong got to me. So when my school announced that we could run for prom king and queen, I decided to give it a go because again, I was in a bit of a slump and I had put down the dress for quite a long time. So to remedy this, I ran for prom court, and I did get into prom court. I did not become prom queen. I would have very much felt like a YA cliche if I had actually won and become prom queen. In fact, the whole time I was running, I was wondering, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? But ultimately, it was just a way to motivate me, and it actually got me very excited to start working back onto my prom dress, and this is what's helped fuel me to continue and finish my prom dress to the end. Now, what's happening here is this piece right here and this piece right here, they go together. At least they're supposed to go together. But the problem is, the way I've been doing it is I've been grabbing the pieces and laying them down next to the other piece, lining them up, and then seeing based on that where I need to continue on doing the certain colors for the embroidery. So to accomplish this with this piece, I'm gonna have to slash down here and then rotate it to get it over here. Because if I cut this whole piece out, This embroidery hoop won't have enough room for the tension, and this is the smallest one I have. This is working, my friends. Okay, let me see. I'm trying to make sure my shadow does not block you from seeing this. It's gonna go here, and then I walk it over to the side. And this is the finished embroidery. There's still some places that later on you'll see in part 2 that I fix up, but other than that, this is all the embroidery that I did, and I can't believe that I spent more than 40 hours sitting down doing this. I mean, I got like 7 hours into the Jurassic Park audiobook, plus whatever hundreds of videos and podcasts and sermons and whatnot that I listened to while making this. But it is done, and I am so thrilled with the results. In part 2, I'm gonna go all over how I finish this corset, a little bit on the skirt of this dress, and then we're gonna go all around and have a little bit of a photo shoot. And thank you for watching part 1 of my quarantine prom dress. If you'd be so inclined, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. God bless and bye! Why do you always look like such an adorable teddy bear?
Pedro, why do you always look so cute?
Oh, the other one got jealous.
Hi, Pedro.